Alright, so I played a game recently called Lacuna. What a ride. I'm definitely recommending it. Although it's short and I'm not exactly sure how much of what I've done wasn't linear. As is, the game is really well done and offers a way to actually fail and still continue, something unbelievably rare in a game. What is it about? Humanity has advanced past the mere little blue planet and moved out into the stars. Colonization is happening at a rapid pace, as if it's the 17th century again. But, just like before, there are always dirty secrets left behind. Now, years later, an investigator is working to unravel the conspiracy surrounding the colony's work toward independence, beginning from assassination of its biggest advocate. What did I like? The plot is actually somewhat complicated. The player has these exposition dumps that they can approach at any time, but it's pretty important to be on top of it to succeed in the investigation. It helps with its pretty short few paragraphs, and it's also really interesting. I can't remember the last time I was interested in this kind of thing. Usually when I read the lore, it's after the fact. After I finish the game or really got into it. But in Lacuna, it's incorporated into the game really well, making history and current events go side by side instead of just setting up some fancy background info. The investigation is also definitely praiseworthy. Not complicated, if anything it's a little too easy, but not exactly holding the player's hand. As I have said, without paying attention, it's possible to fail, and the game would note that. Some scenes can be different, dialogue can be different, and an ending can be blocked off. I can't remember the last time I actually had to write things down, noting what is said to be sure I made the right decision. I now want to find more games like that, and play more Mafia, while writing things down. Never really tried that. I also like the visuals. It's pixelated, but there is quite a bit of effort into it. There are long walks with a lot of little details, such as graffiti, billboards, people walking around, so on and so forth. It feels alive, and also there are some higher detail pictures, especially during the ending. I very much enjoyed that as well, a big fan of pixelated art style like this. I've also enjoyed a few little choices not directly related to the main story, i.e. meeting with the daughter and the ex-wife. In my playthrough I've avoided her as much as possible. Games usually force the player to do favors and meet everyone, so I decided to try the opposite. And in turn there was an effect. Emails, for example. Speaking of actions taken, can result in emails, which can either be unnecessarily little background tidbits or helpful hints for the case. I very much like that as well. I can't really think of complaints aside from length. It's a little too short, and that might impact how much one would be willing to pay. There's some replay value due to the choices, so that might do it. If it's discounted though, I'd suggest buying it in a heartbeat. One other thing might be the controls. They are sensible, but I think not having an ability to rebind anything is a little daft. I've made a tiny script to bind tab to shift and not a hotkey because I use tab. The shift caused me to get a cramp if I hold it with WASD. So that might be a little annoying. Just always have auto hotkey if you're playing on PC. There's no reason not to. And maybe the prologue is another thing I'd complain about. I think it sets a mood for this little light-hearted adventure, with going to school and whatnot, but the tone of over 90% of the game is vastly different. It's dramatic and tense, focused on investigation and the detective, instead of this schoolgirl who just disappears after the beginning, due to obvious things happening. It might turn off someone and not really make sense, since it's not revealed of what it even has to do with the rest of the game until much later on. But like I said, it's nitpicking. This can be easily ignored, and if you do, then you'd get a pretty amazing detective game.